Yo, how's everyone doing? So, it's finally here. I finally made it. We're at the point where I'm making a new Sin guide. I know a lot of people enjoyed the last Sin guide I think it's my most viewed video. It started off at pretty low views, and I kept checking my YouTube stat checker, and I was getting like 200 to like 500 views every like 48 hours. It was kind of insane. Like 100 to like 400-ish views every 48 hours. So people kept watching it and recommending it. And it was really cool talking to you guys. Some of you guys DM'd me. It was really cool interacting with you guys in the comments. And, you know, even playing some Sin players and them telling me that, you know, they watched it, or, you know, they caught the Sin Bible, or, you know, they stole some of my tech that I've left in the video in the advanced section. So I want to make a new one. Obviously the character is completely different. He is a lot worse, but overall different. So with that being said, I'm gonna make this guide a little more in depth. I think before I kind of just talked about, you know, here's his normal, here's his standard, you know, his standing normals, and then here's, you know, just the beginner, advanced, intermediate. And it was kind of a shorter guide. I think this one will be a little longer. I'm gonna talk about everything. And I'm gonna give my honest thoughts. I'm gonna try not to dive too much into his strength as a character. I'm gonna save that for another time. I've already made a video previously on it, but it was at the start, and it was kind of like an emotional rant. I wouldn't even know if I call it emotional, but it was kind of just like early impression ranting. So I'm gonna give a more serious video on what I think about Sin strength, so be on the lookout for that. And I'll also be doing a Sin matchup guide / matchup chart to give my thoughts on those matchups and how, if you play Sin, you should be approaching the matchup. Before we get into this, I just want to kind of give a little brief background on who I am. I obviously am Domi. Like I mentioned, I made the previous Sin guide. I've done a lot with this character. I was the highest placing Sin consistently in season 4 by a pretty large mile for the most part. You know, and going to this season, like I believe I'm like 4 for 4 on TNS top 8s. I'm pretty much the best placer this season, as this new season as well. From Sin was at his best in season 4 to his worst currently, I've been the best placing Sin, and I've put up the results with the character. I'll just throw some top 8s on the screen as I'm speaking. I've obviously, if you've seen me talk about my Icarus number as well, there was some pretty huge names in terms of results from online and offline. I haven't played any offlines, but from my online results, you can tell that I know what I'm talking about. I'm not just some guy just yapping about the character who's like a mid-level player or don't know what I'm talking about. I play this character. If you look at my channel, my videos are focused around this character for the most part. So yeah, that's just who I am. I do think that I play this character differently than everyone else. I think there's only one other Sin that plays kind of like me. And I think I bring something different to the table. So I want to talk about my point of view and how I kind of view the game and what makes me so far branched off from these other Sin players that I'm able to get these results. So I just want to help the community, maybe give you some people some insight on some things they didn't know, or just even talk about the basic things. Just getting it, just, you know, really putting it in people's heads of, you know, how a move should be used, for example. That can go a long way, because I think a lot of people play this character like how they're playing a different character. Like a lot of people play Sin like they're playing Ram, and it just doesn't work. So I want to give my like side of things from someone who is the best. So here we go. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so first of all, let's just talk about Sin. Sin can be simplified to a character that trades complexity and technical skill for simple conversions and easy access to damage, but it's all at the cost of having a resource, which is obviously his stamina. I know most characters have to be somewhat picky on what they can do to convert, but Sin doesn't really have to be too picky. Again, his combos are pretty easy. It's pretty like simple, like what you actually have to go into for the character, right? He's not that hard in terms of just like combo theory, but you know, there's sometimes, you know, Sin has to worry about some combo things, but we'll get into that later. You don't have to dedicate like too much, like I said, you don't have to dedicate too much brain power to his combos. Instead of actual combo game, he's a lot more focused. You want to focus your brain more on his neutral, his offense, and his defense. Because that's mainly where the actual thinking comes, right? And obviously it all dials down around his stamina bar. I know I've said it, but I will say it again. That it is important to realize that. He has simple tools that work well with each other. No real like weird or like outrageous normals that you need to kind of be wary of. He has a DP, which is obviously huge in this game, as you know, an insanely big backdash, which is, it goes insanely far, which is both a pro and a con, but overall it's good. It's 24 frames, it's not the slowest backdash in the game, the slowest is Slayer's at 28, but he's tied for second slowest at 24. 6 frames of invul, which is really good, but again, he literally travels the whole screen when he backdashes, so it's good and bad. His normals are all useful in their own way, his pokes are solid in their own right, but again, what stands out is his ability to convert with stamina off any touch. I mean, it's very good. Now you might be thinking that sounds pretty amazing, but of course there are drawbacks. Sorry, Sin is he's very resource hungry. Obviously, I'm going to talk about again stamina. Obviously the stamina bar. The stamina bar is what allows him to convert, right? As I already said, I think when he has his resource on deck, the scare factor can be there. I know he was hardly nerfed, but it's still there, right? And being able to convert off hits is very strong. I think to be really good at Sin overall, you have to be as good as you are playing around his strengths as you are his weaknesses. And his weaknesses mainly focus around when he's lower on stamina. Basically when he has no stamina, right? You need to be able to play both. You need to be able to switch up your playstyle on this character, because it's going to happen, right? You're going to use your stamina depending on the type of opponent you're fighting. I'll get into it a bit later, but you need to be able to play both games, right? Yes, like I said, Sin can be very scary when he has his resource on deck, but to evolve as a Sin player, you need to be as good as playing around his strengths as you are his weaknesses. You're gonna be in a lot of situations where you feel very weak as Sin, and that means like lower on resources or lower on meat or whatever. Like I said, he's a very resource hungry character. So when you're out, you're gonna feel like you're playing like the worst character in the game. And you need to be comfortable, at least somewhat comfortable, in those situations to make him work overall. You cannot just shy away from his weaknesses and try to only play around his strengths. You will not go too far. But, you know, to understand Sin, let's go over his buttons in order. Let's go from P, K, S, H, and then we'll talk about Dust and then his specials, right? So, 5P, let's start with that. So 5P is long poke. It's fast, it's 6 frames. It's good at interrupting certain characters' options, as you can see with the horizontal, like, hitbox, right? It goes pretty far. Not the greatest anti-air, sadly. It will hit every character in the game standing, except Geo. And can combo to 6 pretty much any time if they're grounded, which is very good. Very, very, very good. I think even from, around max distance as well, which is just really, really, really good. Yeah. 2P as well so 2P is pretty good. It's Sin's fastest normal. It's 5 frames. It's his go-to mash if you're not feeling like, you know, using TP. It's somewhat stubby though, which is not the greatest thing, but it's the speed that matters, right? A 5 frame mash. You can convert if you have stamina on deck, right? Right, something like, you know, obviously not that ender, but you get the point, kind of something like that. But on crouchers, it combos, okay, so it combos into 6P most of the time. If they're crouching, it's actually a bit harder to confirm. Like, you won't get, right? That will happen sometimes. It sucks because the move can be low profiled by certain moves. Just be aware of that, because it will happen. Now let's talk about 6P. So 6P is his anti-air. It's pretty unique. So it's a big, it looks big, right? I've said, oh gosh, man, the amount of times I've talked about this move, it hasn't changed. It's not a vertically huge move. It's horizontally a big move. It's a very good counter poke. And it's very good at anti-ing characters that are diagonally above you, right? Unfortunately though, this move has a tendency to whiff on crouchers and characters that are just directly above Sin. It's like a dead zone. It's just not, if they are above you, like a Happy Couch J2K, like that, he just is really, really bad at dealing with it. And like I mentioned, this 5P isn't the greatest anti-air either. The hitbox is pretty skinny. So that's where Sin kind of struggles, is when opponents are in the air. This doesn't mean it's a bad button by any means. You just have to get used to pressing it and realize when you should and should not be using it, right? You can combo off this move, right? You can combo off this move, so, you know, you could do stuff like this, right? And then obviously using it as an anti-air, you could do like some empty gazelle stuff. So like you could do stuff like, But this costs stamina, and, you know, if you're not gonna break the wall, I wouldn't use it. I prefer, honestly, when I get a counter hit 6p, the thing I just do is... Oop. Right, I usually just go for something simple like that, but I'm sure you can just extend and break the wall. But again, it just depends on the situation, the character you're fighting, and the resource that you have on deck, right? So there's just a lot of thinking that goes into it, so just get comfortable realizing when you should and shouldn't press the 6p, and what you should be looking forward to, you know, go into if you actually land the 6p. It's about 5k. So 5k, pretty generic, nothing really stands out. It's a decent poke when you need more range than this 2p. It has a lot more safety than using his S normals. I think what the best part about his 5k is, though, is you can convert into it, you know, into 2D, you know, into DP, for example, or just, you know, pretty much always lead into a 2D. Like, this will pretty much always work for the most part. So, pretty good, right? So, his 2k is his fastest low. It's no longer YRC safe, which sucks. So, it's unsafe to YRC. It's solid on defense, or kind of will, like, you know, inching up to your opponent in neutral, right? Kind of like, you know, dash blocking a bit. It's the range on it is good. It's not too long, but it's also not too short. You know, with a normal thing with Sin is it can lead to a full combo on hit and leads to hard knockdown pretty consistently for the most part. It's good for tick throws, and it's always good for playing it safe on offense. So overall, it's a solid button still. 6k. So 6k is Sin's, I would say it's his best frame trap for sure. I think it's the cornerstone of his offense. And overall, it's just satisfying to use. It's a low, it has somewhat slow startup, but it leaves Sin at advantage when blocked. It's +3 on block. On hit, it gives Sin an opportunity to do a good combo. It's a button that I personally use a great deal, and maybe I use it even too much. Yeah, it's just so good. This is a 5-frame gap. It's a little weaker versus 4-framers, but, you know, even if you don't feel like ending your turn, you can do something like this. It'll actually beat their mash. So for example, if I have Kai mashing, I'll set him to do on block. Let's go 2p, right? Right, that is very good. Right, that's very good, right? So yeah, just it's just satisfying to use. A close slash. So, it's plus on block, like it's a standard close slash, plus on block, +1. I mean, yeah, there's not too much to complain about it. I guess it's also the core of your offense. His best combos start with this button. I think, hopefully by the time that you get comfortable with Sin, people will actually be scared when they block this button. He has a lot of options to use from it. So, I mean, he has, yeah, a lot of favorable outcomes if you actually get people to block it. So, can't complain about it. He has good options out of it. It has decent height. It's a decent anti-air. Not really, though, but, you know, it does the job, is what I'm trying to say. So, let's talk about Far Slash. Far Slash is Sin's best whiff punishing tool. It's a poke. It has good range. It's slower than average when comparing to other characters. It's 12 frames, sorry, I said 12, sorry. It's 11 frames. Not great active frames and pretty bad recovery. Honestly, you're kind of stuck for like a million years when you press it, but that doesn't mean it's without use. It will pretty much always lead to a full conversion on hit if you're ready for it, and of course you have the stamina. And on block, it can lead to him starting his offense if you're willing to spend everything on it. Again, talk about his resource. My only advice is try not to whiff it. It feels really shit on whiff, so try your best to use it in positions where you like won't get punished, or you're actually, you know, you're actually playing reactive. Don't just swing. If you want to just swing, don't play this character. Go play Ram, right? Go play Happy Chaos. Yeah, let's talk about his 2S next. His 2S, so Sin's crouching poke. It is not a low. Not a low. I repeat, it is not a low. This hits mid. This is the mid. As you can see, he is blocking it standing. This is the mid. I know it sounds bad, but the move has some upsides to it to make up for it. It is pretty slow. It got nerfed in Season 4. It's 13 frames now, which is really bad. So, yeah. But it has good active frames and lower recovery. So, you know, while Far Slash, you know, may be longer, and, you know, put you in quicksand for 30 million years, 2S is just, I mean, you can use it in versus speedsters, right? Versus characters where you don't want to just be stuck in recovery and throw out your hurt box. You know, you can just press this and, you know, play a little safer. Just like his Far Slash can lead to good conversions and obviously set up his pressure if you're willing to spend it. But I will say this, unlike his Far Slash, You can't, like I said, it's good for speedsters. It can be used for speedsters and other characters, obviously, like I said, playing safe. You can whiff this one. Don't be afraid to whiff this one. You can whiff it and you can take a breather. Like it's not the end of the world if you whiff it. Sometimes. Now let's talk about his 5H and yeah. So his 5H is it's a pressure tool. It's pretty much a strict pressure tool. It's great for dragging out pressure. Not that minus on block. I believe it's -2. Good amount of block stun, good amount of hit stun. So you can kind of put anyone in Sin's, like, it's not like, I wouldn't call it mix up, but you can kind of put anyone in like the hook stomp or elk hunt like mini game and actually have them like scared of mashing for the most part. It's purely a pressure tool, so just keep it that way, right? Don't try to change it into something else. And then 2H is Sin's dedicated combo tool. The first hit is a low, which is good for trying to catch people asleep at the wheel. It launches in a way that gives Sin an opportunity for different combos. Keep in mind though, it's very negative on block, so you pretty much will always have to use a special after it to avoid getting punished. Now let's talk about 6H. So 6H, it's decent for what it should be, right? It's meant for frame traps and it's a little bit of combo fodder as well. It's relatively safe on block. I believe it's -4, but never should be used in neutral. He has a good counter hit combo in the corner that is worth learning though. I think you should always wall break when you splat them. I think you should always wall break with this normal if you can't use charge dust to get the most damage possible, right? Obviously, you can like eat at the wall and do like this, but if you're looking for strictly damage, either always charge dust or 6H. Let's see. A 5D is his, obviously, I mean, his universal overhead. Everyone has it. It's not too stubby, but I think the important thing to notice is it's only 1 frame faster than Sin's overhead. So you most likely won't be using it too often. It's pretty unsafe. It does exist if you want to mix it up, but yeah. Like I said, the charged version is the optimal way to break the wall. Now his 2D. So his 2D is pretty good. It's a sweep. Considering since pokes are a little slower, this can be a decent option in neutral for some characters. Pretty matchup specific. I wouldn't be using it all the time. I don't really use it at all in neutral, to be honest. I mean, it's a sweep, so it leads to a hard knockdown. It will, yeah, pretty much always combo from his K normals. Yeah, overall just a decent button that makes it like, there's no real flaw that makes it worse than like the standard ones. So yeah, let's talk about his air normals again, and then his air normals, and then we'll get into his specials. So JP is a good scramble button. I think it's best to use to like rising to catch people pressing, or at least put them in block stun when they're in the air. On counter hit and even some normal hits, it can lead to some pretty decent stuff. You know, you can use it in neutral, like, you know, like this, for example, right? Sometimes if you watch me play, I like to do stuff like this. So you can use it in that way, but yeah, it's not the most reliable thing. JK is your good rising air normal. Similar to JP, but this one converts much easier in most situations. It's a slightly more risky to use, but it does allow for some combos that you don't get for the most part, right? Like, right, stuff like that, for example, right? I mean, you could get stuff like this out of JP as well. Mid-screen, he's not the best at getting, like, the conversions like how Kai is. I'll put it off counter hit. Right, you can do stuff like that. Do stuff like that, right? If you super jump, it's a little harder to get a conversion, but I mean, you get the point, right? JS, so this is Sin's jump in now. It's still not a great one, even after the buff, but it's basically just another air to air. It can be very limited in use, like versus characters that have good, like, low profiles. Yeah, I mean, this is your safe jump button right here, but be careful because it can be 6p even when using it as a safe jump, right? So keep that in mind. JH is the ram tier air to air. So I think it's annoying for many characters to deal with. If you're trying to just play lame, like you probably fight Sin players that just do this, right? So it can be annoying to deal with. Yeah, it can be a good like entry tool if you're thinking I might as well just send it and use it from full screen. So I think it's good to establish you're not afraid to use it, but as a game plan, I wouldn't use it like as a game plan, like always. And then JD's is dive kick. It's not great, it's pretty shit. It's pretty slow, big hurt box, can be used as like somewhat of an air stall, but keep in mind, like when you use it, you will get hit out of it more times than like you won't. It's niche, but can be used in some combos, like as you saw with the JK earlier. We'll talk about specials, and then we'll talk about his supers. So, all right, let's talk about Beat Driver. So this special move, it's what defines Sin, right? It's a big part of him, at least something if you manage to touch them with it, if you're willing to spend the stamina. Decent option in neutral, although it's kind of slow, and the hurt box to it is kind of gross, but that doesn't mean it's something you shouldn't use a good amount. It is usable in neutral. You have to be very careful and like precise of when you're using it, right? Yeah, Sin does have a lot of options when converting from his buttons, especially on counter hit, but this is going to be your most consistent one because it does lead to a full combo on normal hit as well, if you have the resource. But be aware, it is negative, very negative on both hit and block, but it does push the opponent back a good deal. So it's not the biggest of like problem in the world, depending on like where you are on the screen and like where you use it. With stamina, again, you can cancel into the follow-up, or you can either go into, or you can go into Gazelle. The follow-up advances Sin pretty quickly and guard crushes. It's pretty plus on block, I believe it's +6. You can also Gazelle Step after this. Gazelle Step the follow-up. So this +6, and then obviously you can spend 2 stamina to get right in their face. This is very, very strong, right? It's just expensive is the issue. On hit, it tumbles the opponent, obviously, right? And then you can get like the whole like pickup like this. Very simple combo, but this is the core of what Sin does. So just put it to your memory. Okay, now let's talk about Elk Hunt. So Elk Hunt, obviously it's the advancing low. It's good to use as a call out in neutral, and also a pressure and combo tool, right? It's a low profile, so it will go under a good amount of pokes, but be aware it will not go under everything. There's things that it doesn't go under, and even if it does go under some things, it doesn't actually low profile until like frame 10. So just be careful when using it. It's not as good as you're actually thinking. It's, yeah, just not too good of an option to rely on, especially because the reward is very situational and not as consistent as it was before, but it should be something you get comfortable using. By itself, it's negative on block and hit, so never use if you don't have stamina or meter to keep yourself safe. You can't combo into it from Sin's other pokes. You can only do that from like with Beat Driver. You can't do it with Elk Hunt. But it's a good way to keep yourself in their face, since it does have a follow-up that is, you know, very plus on block, kind of just like Beat Driver. And yeah, it does put Sin in a very strong spot. It does have a unique quirk to it though. If Elk Hunt or the follow-up is the first hit of a combo, the follow-up will then drop the enemy very, very quickly. So it essentially will make it impossible to combo them without meter. This is the nerf, right? If it's the first hit of a combo, right, it just flops. But if anything else is the starter, so right, then it will act as how it did before the nerfs, and you will still be able to get a combo. It works pretty well in pressure in tandem with Hoof Stomp, which I'll go over right now, which has the exact same startup as Elk Hunt, but one hits low and then obviously hits high. So Hoof Stomp. Okay, so like I mentioned, this is the counterpart to his low, Elk Hunt. So the special itself is just like the other ones. It's negative on hit and negative on block. However, like, you know, just like the other ones, if you use stamina, it's no longer the case. You can make yourself plus, or at least safe on block. It's only the follow-up for this one is only kind of negative. You won't get punished really, like, ever. So it's good, but again, it does cost stamina. With Gazelle Step though, you can be plus in their face, which is very good for him. On hit, it launches the opponent slightly backwards, but cannot be converted mid-screen anymore, sadly. Not even with a counter hit. In the corner though, this does change because they will bounce, because now it has a feature where it will ground bounce. So if you're spaced, you can get a 1 follow-up conversion. You know, the combo before was you do this, and then you get a close slash, right? But since it no longer ground bounces like that, you can't get a pickup at all mid-screen. It has to be in the corner. So in the corner, you can get the close slash combo again. And then if you're spaced out of the corner, you can get, I'm too far, you can get the, oh my gosh, the one stamina follow-up combo, which again, it's very spacing dependent, so you just gotta be careful. You gotta kind of eye the spacing. I don't land this really at all. I think I've landed it like 2 times total in tourney so far. Yeah, it sucks spending stamina on a guess but that's just the way it is, right? Yeah, I mean, this special overall just doesn't have that much use outside the corner. But with meter, you can always make it worth it since you can combo off it, right? So even mid-screen, being able to do this into like something like this, right? Like something simple like that, for example, or you can spend more and break the wall. So again, it does have a use. It's just worse than it was before. And without tension, it's strictly only good in the corner. And let's talk about Sin's final move, or sorry, not final move, getting there. Let's talk about his best move, his DP, Hawkmaker. So it's a DP, it's his best move. Invincible on startup. I mean, right? Anyone trying to do some whack shit, you just call him out for it, you DP. You can also use stamina to get in their face after the DP, which is good. It's arguably the best DP in the game. I mean, it's a crazy combo tool now, as it's always been since Season 4. I mean, it's definitely his best combo tool, since if you can use it in a combo, you don't have to spend like a gazelle step, for example, to like follow up. You just spend 1 bar of stamina, which is a lot more, which is a lot better for him, considering how important his resource is, right? It's such a huge deal. Combos that use the DP as well tend to do more damage, so it does everything. It does lack, however, in trade for the damage in the 1 stamina pickup, it does lack corner carry. Mid-screen combos without using like meter to like RTL, mid-screen combos that use the DP will hardly lead to wall breaks. They usually just won't. Either way, it's a great special, and it's the strongest point for sure. Gazelle Step, you will basically never use this. It's something that can be good at catching people off guard. There's a few matchup specific examples where it can be useful. Overall, it's just not really a thing to care about. I said earlier, it's okay for some 6P anti-air combos, counter combos, but that's if you're willing to spend the stamina at your own expense. And then his last special move, Eat, Still Growing. It's a taunt, basically. It can be useful in some ways. It can occasionally give you enough tension to do super on a wall splat. So if you're like at the edge of having 50 meter, and like you do this and then you super, right, you can sometimes just build that 50. It can give you a little bit of extra health as well if you eat the right item, but you don't really lose anything by not doing it. Yeah, it's just a fun move. I like using it, like, if I do like, okay. Right, like that, for example. And then his supers. Let's start with RTL, right? Ride the Lightning. So the super is the best wall breaking, has the best wall break potential in the game for a super, and it's not really close. It can break the wall from essentially anywhere on the screen. It's a fantastic option if you want a wall break, right? It's also invincible on startup, so you can use it if you're not sure if you want to use DP or if you have 100 bar. It doesn't do too much damage by itself, but it does do an extra attack if you have extra meter on deck, which can not only help you break the wall, but it also does a very big amount of damage. Yeah, it's just a lifesaver if Sin needs to do extra damage, to close out a round, right? I'll do like... Right, and then there's Barrel, Tyrant Barrel. Obviously this one, the one that comes with the clean hit mechanic. This is go-to super for breaking the wall, right? If you're able to. Exceptional super, does respectable amount of damage, and it can break the wall from a surprising distance, right? I think what makes this very good as well is the option to car cancel from his specials. These lead to quick wall breaks that can potentially put him on the right path of snowballing the opponent. So if you have meter and you're sure to wall break, it's almost always the right thing to do. So, right? Or like, you're here. Oh, I suck. Right, stuff like that. Now, okay, now that the basic stuff is over, I've gone through all of his moves, I've talked a little bit about him as an overview. Let's talk about the game plan, and then let's talk about like things you should be doing at like a beginner intermediate level, and then we'll get into the advanced section overall, and then we'll close out with my overall final thoughts. So at the start of this video, I talked about the important things to understand as Sin, right? And like the kind of archetype he is. But let's talk about his game plan. So, okay, to simplify Sin, he's a very reactive character. He's capable of snowballing and winning from round start, but he needs to understand the opponent's actions. He isn't great at forcing his will, but once he gets his touches, he can be very hard to beat, right? You have to be comfortable in switching your playstyles as Sin. I mentioned this before, like, from playing him at his strongest to playing him at his weakest, you need to be fine playing in lower stamina. You need to be fine playing 2 stamina, 3, 1, right? You need to be comfortable with no meter, with no burst, right? You need to, especially now that Wild Assault is gone and that was the big crutch for people, you need to be fine in switching your playstyle and, you know, sometimes giving up your turn in certain situations and just being fine, not always feeling like you're in the driver's seat. You need to be fine switching it up, especially since his matchup spread is not too great. He cannot play the same way he does versus it, like versus one character, he can't play the same way versus another character. It feels like with this character, each matchup is dependent. And like I said, I will be making a matchup guide and not too far after this video. So stay tuned for that if you want to know more of what I'm talking about. He lacks neutral tools. His neutral tools are just not great, and the ward off them are pretty okay. They can be good, but overall the quality of his neutral tools are not great. So it's just hard for him to force his will. He doesn't really have a spammable move, right? He doesn't have like a gunshot or like a Milia Capel or, you know, something like that where he can just always use it. He's not the same, he's not that strong to the point where he can also just, like I said, force the same game plan versus everybody. It doesn't work like that. You know, big examples of that will determine which specials you use, which normals you're comfortable pressing, whether or not you should just, or like whether or not you should just win from defense in the matchup, right? Sin will rarely feel completely ignorant to play. You know, like I just said, nothing is spammable. You'll have to get used to getting bursted, which is so good for Sin, and then finding a way back in. And that finding a way back in can be like how you lose the game. But let's get into beginner and intermediate. So you need to, you need to learn what your starters are. Establish that you can punish others for making mistakes. You need basically just learn the character, right? Learn what you can and cannot get away with. He's minus on a good amount of things, but the fear of getting counter hit is what stops people from mashing all the time, right? If people are getting eager to mash, then use stamina. You know, if people are eager to mash on just everything, you know, you can do stuff like this and then like call them out for it, for example, right? Well, if they're blocking, of course, right? Like this. If they're not letting you get away with this, then do this into this, for example, right? But if people are playing passive, then save your stamina, because in the future they will start mashing. So then you save your stamina and then use it for bigger like block strings in the future when the opponent is trying to adapt to you in the style that you're, you know, using. Sin combos can be different, but are typically the same outside of damage and stamina used, right? He doesn't really have too many crazy combos. Pretty simple. You should always be looking to use the least amount of stamina for combos. When you're out of stamina, use more low-risk attacks. Less far slash and more 2S to stop advancing attacks and event, like, you know, characters approaching. When you're low on stamina as well, instead of doing button to special, start doing button to button. So like that, for example, not really that. Now, that's pretty much it for the beginner and intermediate. I've already explained what the moves do. I've kind of explained the game plan a good bit and, you know, the introduction to the character. That's pretty much all I have for the intermediate and beginner level. I'm gonna talk about the advanced section right now. Maybe some of this will fall into the intermediate section. So if you're at that intermediate section and maybe you think you're ready to take a couple things from here, then please stay along. So I think I mentioned this at the start, but you can go watch other Sins. I mean, you can go watch other Sins. You don't have to exactly watch me, but I can say for certain I am the best. I mean, by results, and I don't mean to sound like I'm like trying to like put other people down, but by results, I mean, if you look at even something as simple as the Strive rankings, I think I'm number 2 right now with the least amount, like very low games played overall for the Sin for just the Sin rankings. I mean, on Icarus for offline and online tournaments combined, I think I'm number 9 out of every player in North America. Right? I'm very confident in my Sin and the style I use to play him. So if my Sin isn't the example you want to use, that is fine. But I think I do know a good amount about the character to give my opinion on what is the best stuff to use at a higher advanced level. I think for Sin, you gotta start by being respectful. Not just to the opponent, but to Sin as well. Being respectful to the character. Most important thing is that stamina should always try to be safe. If you have to spend 3 to wall break, then go ahead. But if you can use less, then please do that, right? Either if you have to use a Wild Assault or maybe Tension, right? I would prefer for you to use that instead of just blowing everything. If Sin is lower on HP than the opponent, then using 3 is not good, right? You do have to mind game a lot, not versus just the opponent, but with yourself as well. When using all your stamina at round start, you have to think about a lot of things. You have to think, when are they gonna burst? Because they're either gonna burst the moment they get hit, which is the best situation for you. They're gonna burst when you use the Gazelle step to use 2 stamina, or they're gonna burst you right here, right before you press S to use your 3rd bar. So you have to think of when you're actually going, of when the opponent is gonna burst. It's huge, right? So yeah, you have to think, what's the burst difference between you and the opponent when you're using your stamina and like going to break the wall? You have to think, what's the meter they're gonna gain from the combo and the stamina you're gonna lose? You know, you could have to think, you know, when you're using your stamina, you're breaking the wall and you wanna use super, you have to think of, okay, like, do I wanna use super? Like, is this a character that I cannot let go? Like, like, for example, like Axel, you cannot like Testament, Axel, you can't let them go. You need to use super when you wall break. If you're breaking wall without super, it feels pretty abysmal at times. So you know, a lot of times just putting them in the corner and then saving a bar can be for the best, right? You know, again, there's just some characters you can't let get away. Let's think about this. Round Star versus Kai, for example. Let's say I land a Far Slash. This is gonna be a straight path for a wall break. But for Sin to wall break, he's gonna have to use 3 or 2 stamina and Wall Assault, which is obviously gonna be 50 burst, or 1 stamina just to put him in the corner, which would be just this. Wall break is the most important thing, so I think only the first 2 of using 3 or using 2 are your real options. But like I mentioned before, you have to consider if your opponent has burst and if they can use it smartly. If you are for sure they're going to burst, you will have to drop some combos or do less to save stamina overall. Remember, you want to preserve your stamina and they want you to spend, right? So another example would be versus Biken. I have no stamina, but I have meter to super, right? So I use 3 stamina, and I put her on the wall, and I can super to get the hard knockdown. Sin won't have anything to do post-wall break. You know, she has a 4-frame mash, so she can beat close slash 6K, which I mentioned is like the core of our pressure, our best frame trap. She can beat that. And then obviously she has parry, right? So you can't save jump her. It's hard to meaty her. You don't have like a projectile to meaty for you. So so basically, you don't want a super, right? Just save the meter for the next neutral interaction and try to win off that. That's my advice. Use it, use the meter and save it for, you know, to position yourself. Now, let's look at Axel. So you want to use the meter. Like I mentioned before, you want to use the meter. You need to keep him locked down. His defense isn't super great. It's not the worst. Okay, it's not the worst thing being sent full screen because you can kind of recover your stamina by playing that slow neutral game with him. But for the most part, you need to keep him locked down. His defense isn't great, so it's, again, that's all more to use the stamina, the meter in the first place. His defense isn't great, so you can steamroll him once you get your, you know, your turn. I think some things I mentioned before in the previous guide, you have to learn how to IB and IBFD due to Sin's stubbier normals. You know, 2P's kind of hard to mash out with at times. So IBing to put them closer to you can be good. And then using IBFDs, for example, if Kai does, right, knowing when to IB and IBFD will win you games. So I think it's important to learn. Like I mentioned before, get comfortable playing in lower stamina. Stop blowing all your stamina. Be considerate of it. Be respectful. But kind of what I just talked about again, knowing when to use your meter. Again, you lack a real safe jump for some characters. They can kind of just 6P it. So just always be aware of how you're using your resources, right? Yeah, you mix it up. You can be a little tricky with the way you do things. For example, his people don't realize, but Sin's mash cost a resource. This cost a bar of stamina. And the situation itself isn't the greatest. So what if you do something like, you know, this isn't really too great of a hit, right? Especially if you have 1 stamina, right? Just, you don't get any reward off this. So what if you do something like So you have one stamina. If you do something like, right, kind of be tricky with some of your stuff. You know, you could also use this as like a throw bait, for example. So if I do here, right, they see the gazelle step, they're gonna mash throw. Oop, let me take him off mash, sorry. If you've watched my gameplay, you've seen me be able to do this a million times, right? Oop. Right. Stuff like that. Throw bait, very, very good. And then obviously you get like the 2H pickup on your landing. Again, Sin is just so resource hungry right now that it's every stamina bar is important. I think overall, just remember to be respectful. You could get away with some ignorant stuff before, but not now. You will not be a great player if you just like try to play this character ignorantly. It just won't work. Look at the results. That's all I'll say. Respectfully, look at the results. I mean, look at every other, gosh, this sounds so like fucking, like just like I have a big ego or something. I don't, but realistically, just look at the results of Sin players and then look at mine. You cannot play this character anything like how you would in Season 4. This is a whole different character. He's a lot weaker, a lot easier to fight, and it dumbed down for some people. So everyone kind of has like access just being this character on accident right now. But overall, yeah, that's kind of it for me. I've been recording for a while. Yeah, that will be it. As always, thank you for watching. If you want to see any type of different Sin videos in the future, maybe like an explanation where I just like go through why I made certain choices during tournament, or you know, I already have like a matchup guide / chart coming out soon. So if you want something different, then let me know in the comments. I'm always willing to take Sin questions. You could DM me on Discord, DM me on Twitter. You could just comment on the video, whatever you guys choose. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Thank you for all the love in the first Sin guide. And I hope this one helps just as much for this new Sin. So yeah, thank you everyone, and until next time.